Hello and welcome to the Bee Formless Flow-Driven CEO podcast. I'm going to say happy Friday because it's Friday morning here, and I'm going to say happy Thursday Eve. Oh no, Friday Eve to you, Sam. Samantha Berkowitz, all the way from Asheville, North Carolina, where it is Thursday, 5:30 p.m. So you're close. Thank you for joining the show, Sam.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you. It's always a bit of a tongue twist when it's like 7:30 in the morning. I'm trying to get my words out, but you know what I'm trying to say. But I thought that we would just quickly just talk about your successes and how, you've come to be the founder of what is called Unmasked Nutrition. Absolutely love it. And I will be asking you how did you come up with this Unmasked Nutrition? So you're the founder and you established it back in 2021 and more recently have gone into it as in a full-time capacity. So big congratulations to you. It's a health and wellness business dedicated to empowering people to heal their relationship with food and their bodies by stripping away the shame and confusion. And I can so relate to that. I was just talking to you pre-show. You have a background in nutrition and a passion for authenticity, and you guide clients in creating sustainable, personalized approaches to health that align with who they truly are. You find a addition model versus a restriction model. I completely relate to that as well. You specialize in neurodivergent, and that's your main focus, but also eating disorders as well. And your philosophy is rooted in the belief that thriving begins when we stop hiding behind the masks and start living and eating in alignment with our true selves. Through your work, you help people, I guess for me, unlearn their societal pressures, which is like letting go, uh,
Mhm.
you know, to relearn nourishing practices and reclaim their energy and confidence. So tell
Mhm.
us a bit about your journey.
Yeah. So I like I went to school to be a dietitian. Like, I'm gonna learn like the best way to eat and kind of like usually that is the precursor of most folks that have had a difficult relationship with food. Like, I'm gonna figure out the perfect way or the best way, or like I'm gonna learn this and then I can help other people do it too. And through schooling, honestly, it fostered like a disordered relationship with food. Just because I think a lot of times, sometimes stuff in the classroom is kind of posed as like very black and white. This is good, this is bad, or this needs to be done this way, or this is exactly how many calories you need. Things that are right, we know in practice are not that black and white, are very gray, are very nuanced. Um, and so that kind of fostered that, which was through food, kind of excessive exercise in that capacity. And when I got to grad school, I learned more about like intuitive eating and with a focus in public health, also like all the things that affect our food choices that are not always in our control,
Yeah.
especially in the US. And so that really like changed my perspective on nutrition. And while I wasn't engaging in a lot of the disordered eating practices I was in college, when I was in grad school, like I had worked through some of that, learning more about intuitive eating really brought to light that like there was still lingering pieces that were just not as I wasn't as aware of, or because I wasn't counting calories anymore, like doing but engaging in those behaviors that are very blatantly like, okay, a little too rigid, but I was still having those thought processes around food that were still kind of putting things in black and white, feeling stressed about certain things. And so that took a long time for my own work, but I was really thankful to be able to do that work before being like a dietitian, like while I was still in school before seeing clients. I know a lot of clinicians that do that work later, and not because they didn't want to do it, but right, we all are on our own journey. And so I just happened to find it sooner rather than later, which I was thankful for. Um, but yeah, it really opened my eyes to that as well as like a health at every size approach. So more weight inclusive, like the number on the scale does not determine our health status,
Oh, I
or
love
our body
this.
size, does not indicate that. And so really going that route. So my business, I started like nutrition counseling, focusing mostly on eating disorders and disordered eating. And while I still love that population, and that is our bread and butter, I was noticing this through line with my neurodivergent clients, folks with ADHD, autism, other neurodivergencies, that were having like these commonalities. And I have ADHD myself. And so I
Oh,
was
okay.
like, oh, like this is interesting. Um,
I have so many questions for you already, by the way. Like, I won't
okay.
interrupt you, but I'm just like, keep going. But I'm like, I'm trying to remember them all in my brain because I want to write them down.
Ask me, interrupt me, please, because sometimes I
Okay,
get on like
I am going
a
to. So
tangent.
intuitive, can you please firstly explain intuitive eating, just so everyone in the audience knows or show knows what that is about?
Yes. So intuitive eating on a broad spectrum is like it's essentially like more cueing into your internal body cues instead of focusing on external cues to tell us like how to eat. So, and there are other aspects that kind of relate into body image and movement, but mainly it's around food. Um, and so we're kind of taught from many different spots that, we can't trust our body and we have to rely on external things like diets or calorie counting or intermittent fasting, the list goes on and on. But that we can't trust ourselves and we have to follow these rules. But what intuitive eating does is kind of helps us unpack and work through a lot of those rules and sometimes like fat phobia and weight stigma, and then really cue back into our own body. So, our own hunger cues, our own fullness cues, satisfaction with food. Enjoyment of food is an important piece that kind of gets not talked about ever. And so, yeah, just kind of tuning back into our body. And for folks that are neurodivergent, there can be like I make adjustments with that because they have trouble with internal cue reading. But generally, like that's the principle of it, to kind of cue in more to ourselves than like to the outside to make those decisions.
And then is that the commonality that neurodivergent people have? Like you said, there's a commonality you were noticing between with ADHD, some of your autistic clients, etc., and you have those. Like, what's the commonality with food there?
Yeah. So folks that are neurodivergent have trouble with interoceptive awareness, which is our ability to hear and interpret internal body cues. So, exteroceptive awareness is like touch, feel, like those external things we can notice. Internal is like those internal body cues. So it can be hunger, fullness. It can also be having to use the bathroom or thirst. And they have trouble with that, especially because sometimes we get hyper focused or just like it's the way the brain's wired that we're not always noticing them, usually sometimes until like we're really hungry and starving, or we really have to go to the bathroom, or really thirsty, right? Those extremes. And so that's the adjustment I kind of make
Right.
for those clients. Sometimes we do need external cues to help like remind us. But the commonality I was noticing was that, like with the interoceptive awareness, that being difficult. And then sometimes those clients have different hunger cues. So most folks, a hunger cue is like that growling of the stomach. But my neurodivergent clients tend to have other cues that come first. So they might feel growling of the stomach, but they're feeling that when they're like starving, like right when we've kind of waited too long to eat. But they're getting other cues that we don't associate with hunger earlier. So like a headache or increased tiredness, like really tired, increased trouble focusing, like more than their baseline, stomach aches, feeling nauseous, like these things that we tend to not cue into being like, oh, I need to eat. But those are actually their hunger cues that happen first. It's just like we have to connect those dots there.
Do you get that with disordered or eating disordered or eating disorders or disordered eating as well? Like, is there like a commonality there as well at all, out of interest?
With neurodivergence or like the hunger cue
Or
piece.
the hunger cue, just the hunger cue. Yeah.
So often, yeah, when folks are struggling with disordered eating or eating disorders, especially for folks that are engaging in restrictive behaviors and with undernourishment, sometimes, like, if we ignore our hunger cues enough, our body will stop sending them because they're basically
Yeah.
like, well, you're not listening to me, so, like, whatever. But so when folks are kind of going through that process, there is a while that they're not going to feel those hunger cues. And so they might not necessarily feel those other ones either. but the as the kind of renourished and readjusting into like that, they come back. So there is some of that where like through recovery process, there's a little what they would call like more mechanical eating. Like I'm not really hungry, like, but I need to do this, right? Whether we're on like a weight restoration journey or just like a maintenance part, sometimes they don't really feel that hunger for a while. It does come back usually eventually, but yeah, for there are periods where like those can be kind of disoriented as well in a different way.
I love the language. I love the modern language you are using, like this weight restoration, like all these different things, because, from my own experience with an eating disorder, like the language, I go back to like, gosh, however many years ago that was. I was a teenager at the time, so I'm talking a long time ago. And that language just still triggers me because it was so like restrictive and you're doing bad and you're doing this and you're doing that and like like it's back to kind of even it's a complete opposite of watching your calories. It's more that you're getting told increase, but it was in like such a it's actually, you know what? It was in just such a hustle sort of old world mentality. And so what you're
Mhm.
bringing is this new world order of nutrition that is not that. And I use that word hustle because it was hustle. It was like a hustle. It was a stress. It felt really stressful. It felt really, um, aggressive is the wrong word, but do you know what I mean? It wasn't helping.
Intense.
It was hindering. Yeah, it wasn't making me better. It was making me worse to a degree. And yet you're doing, from what I can gather and what I can see, is just full alignment and working with people to understand them, understand their inner psyche, understand how to like it's like you're bespoking it all, and yet you've got all these great terms that you're bringing into nutrition now that just feel so much more less shameful. Like you're removing that shame because you've got the shame already, right? You're removing that shame and confusion because you kind of anyone who's had just like a disorder, like a difficult relationship with food, there is a confusion. Like even from a neurodivergent, there probably is a confusion because, like you're saying, everything's like external and lit up, and like, but then they don't know how to necessarily go inwards. And I'm not getting that language right? But like even for me, there was this confusion, and then it just always was shame. Like I can't, you know what I mean? Like, yeah,
Absolutely, especially like with neurodivergent clients too, there's a lot of like, well, I should be able to do this. Like I
yeah,
should,
that's what I'm talking about.
should. And yeah, and so it's like, well, okay, if right, a lot of times it has to do with, well, I should cook at home more, right? Even something as basic as that. And it's like, okay, well, regardless of what you feel like you should be doing, like what is actually attainable? And that's like where I set, especially with goal setting, of like, if you are not cooking at home at all, we're not setting a goal to be cooking 3 meals a day every day of the week next week, right? It's like slow building or like what works for you. Like what meal is the easiest that we can start with? Like we don't have to start with the hardest thing all the time. Um, it's just yeah, I think we're talking a little bit pre-show about like the addition restriction thing. And I
Yes.
really focus on that so much because I think a lot of times, and even in my schooling, like it's always like, okay, you need to be eating less of this, or restrict this, not too much of this. And though that language like fosters that like hyper anxiety around food of like, am I having too much? Is this? Instead of like thinking about it in a way that is, okay, well, if we increase our like fiber intake or vegetable and fruit intake, naturally we're gonna lessen other things just because like that's right how it works. Like we're just swapping other things in. And it's not like a replacement, but like when we have more variety, there's just more variety. And so instead of being like, well, you need to eat less of this and you need to eat more of this, it's like, well, how about we try adding this in? And like focusing on like adding more fiber, things like that. I had someone ask me recently of like, is there anything like we really shouldn't be eating? Like, there's got to be one thing, right? And I said, honestly, I don't really have an answer for that, but we could use more fiber, like at least for Americans, most of us could use a little bit more fiber in our diet. And I'm like, if we focus on that instead of focusing on what to take out, because if we're taking out, we're not adding anything in usually. But if we focus on adding in, like naturally everything else will kind of like,
But when you take out as well, like if you think about it, when you take out, like I'm a big believer in subtractive psychology, don't get me wrong. And that's
Mhm.
that ability to remove what's no longer serving you
Sure.
so that you have then that freedom to then
Yeah.
reimagine and recreate. But that's not done in a way that's like you need to take this out and you need to do this. It's done in a way where it's like getting my client to understand or become aware of not what's no longer serving them and having that ability to let go, which is exactly what you're talking about here. But when we start going in with this restrictive, do this, do that, take that out,
Mhm.
honestly, that's where the shame comes for me in. And then there's just this confusion, like you say, of I don't like I'm confused. Like explain this to me, right? Because I don't know what you mean by like that I need to remove this. What are we
Mhm.
replacing it with? It's that unknown. It's that unknown piece where it's like this is scary. So then it becomes confusion because you're like, well, if we take this out, now
Mhm.
what? Like you probably get that like with your clients. Well, now what? Like, or no doubt you get clients coming in that have probably seen other nutritionists or and then they've come
Mhm.
in because they're like, I'm not getting the answers, or I'm not getting the support I need.
Yes, unfortunately, too many people come through our door saying two different things. One is if it's a neurodivergent client, they're like, I've seen other dietitians, but they just don't understand this like one part of me that is like the core to their factory settings, right? Their neurodivergence. And so it's like they were a good provider and they provided good information, but it's like most of the time my neurodivergent clients understand what they need to do. It's the how that they need help with, and that's the gap like most other providers are not doing. It's like, here's what you should do. And they're like, great, yes, I understand that. That's not the problem. And so just having those experiences in other settings where they're like, I just don't feel understood. And then the other side of it is our clients that come with that are in larger bodies and tend to be like, usually our biggest referrals for my business is therapists, other healthcare providers. And I get emails super often being like, hey, this is the client, this is what they're needing. Like, does this align with you? And it's like, yes. I was like, too many clients come through our doors and say they were in a doctor's office, they were in another dietitian's office. And the answer is, well, you should lose weight or XYZ. And it's like, well, nope, that's like not
Helpful.
uh helpful or what they're looking for, right? That's not even what they came to you for. So, like they're always checking in about that. And then obviously once providers get to know us better, they know that. But being like, oh, is this a good fit? Like I had a therapist reach out to me recently and it was a client who is in a larger body and has PCOS. And it's like she needs to be heard in her experience and she wants like nutrition education, but like not weight loss education. And it's like, yeah, understood. Like if we are gonna do nutrition education, like for her and like with PCOS, then we're talking about that in a weight neutral way, like an addition way, a non-diet way. Um,
My God, I wish you were around when I was going through my stuff back when I was a teenager because your language is incredible. Like it's just so refreshing. It's so like you are reshaping nutrition, which takes me to firstly, unmasked. How did the name come about? Unmasked nutrition.
hmm Yeah, so it came as a part of my rebrand when I switched and wanted to make neurodivergence like one of our like main focuses. So I worked with a branding strategist, and we were like, I wanted to do the rebrand one also because I was hiring employees, and before my name of my business had my name in it, and I was like, I just want to make this more of like a neutral entity. Um, and we were just, brainstorming things. And I feel like unmasked, one, because masking is like a term in the neurodivergence community of kind of like putting that mask on, of like fitting in, being quote unquote normal, like fitting into those societal rules, versus unmasking is like being your true self and like with all of, the quirks or differences that maybe your neurodivergence brings up in you as like a personality trait or just, in general. And so I really like wanted that piece of like people can feel safe in our space as well as like unmasking nutrition of like it doesn't, yeah, it is gonna, like, we are going to make this work for you as your like unmasked self, your unique person. So, like, you're a unique person. So, our recommendation should also be unique. Like, of course, there are things like I find like tend to work well for my ADHD clients or tend to work well for certain clients. But, right, with every individual client, maybe we need to tweak that a little bit or a lot. Like, it depends.
Yeah.
Um,
And so
yeah.
then when you booked the pod, you answered my question around what is one unique insight or lived experience in life, leadership, or business. And this is the response, and I do love it. It was when I finally leaned into who I am, personally and professionally. Stopped being afraid of showing up truly, stopped trying to be like everyone else, is when my business started to feel authentic to me and truly take off and thrive. Can you
Mhm.
share a little bit about that, please?
Yeah. When I was deciding to go into private practice, I was still in grad school, like when I was thinking about all of this. And that was during a time when like a lot of people blew up on Instagram, on social medias, and it kind of was made it seem like the only way to have a successful private practice was to like have a big following on social media, and that's how you get clients and all this stuff, which now that I've learned more, like in the US we have state licensure, and so I can't see clients in all 50 states, even virtually, and so reaching people in that way doesn't actually make sense necessarily, like unless you have a very large team and are holding all those licensures. People can find you on Instagram, but then like they still can't work with you because they're somewhere you can't serve. So when I finally like leaned out of that and like putting a lot of time there and actually connecting with folks in my local community and not being afraid to just connect with therapists, just connect with people and keep like treading until traction finally picks up. Like even my personal therapist who's in private practice was like, it's just dry and then eventually it just starts flowing. And it's just like your networking efforts and things just eventually pay off. Like it's a long game strategy, not the quick game. Um, yeah.
So
So just
true,
when
isn't it? It's a long game strategy. Like, just I so resonated with that too, in terms of like when you're your authentic self, and almost when
Mhm.
you stop, if we come back to this whole restrictive versus additive, like when you stop trying to be like everybody else who's building a business or whatever and do it your way, and you almost block out the white noise because you get so many different ways of how you should do it, what you should be doing, should do more of this, you should do more of that. It's almost like it's confusing, and then you're almost like, and then you kind of start judging yourself and the shame kicks in because you're like, well, why isn't my business taking off yet?
Yeah.
Because you're so focused on that. So, but what you're talking about here is, and I love it because it's so true, is when you, and even back to your therapist, is when you, it is dry, but I think that's also for me, whilst you're working through who you authentically are and
Mhm.
what sticks and what works for you, right?
Yeah. I took a long break from social media for that reason because I was like, this is just not helping me, like for my business and like posting in that way. And just doing that offline stuff, like that stuff no one sees, served me a lot better. And and now I've gotten back into that space, one for like a creative outlet, it's fun. As well as like I launched a new service recently that, doesn't have those state like location restrictions. So, just building some community there. But yeah, I think just like doing the things I want to do, like, yeah, there's a lot of talk around should you take insurance? Should you be self-pay? Should you have an in-person office? Or are you telehealth only? Which EHR do you use? Which of this do you do? Like, and kind of also learning like no choice is permanent. You can always make a change. Like, yes, it might be a pain in the butt to make a transition, like operationally, systemsly, but it will be fine. Like, if you don't pick the perfect platform, like it's gonna be okay, and you can transition to the other one if you decide that the one you picked wasn't the right fit. Because sometimes you don't know until you're using something like that.
Yeah, and your business evolves. As you evolve, I think as you evolve, as you reshape, as are the terms I like to use, shape and reshape, that as you're being formless, so to speak, where it's like, you're like water, you're kind of just like working through things.
Mhm.
it's like how you pour a glass of water out. Everything evolves. And that's just the beauty of who we are and what we're doing now. So Sam, tell me in terms of your clientele and your business, you were working full time for quite a while. Oh, sorry, you're now full time in your business.
Mhm.
So you started the business. At what point did you then go, okay, I can now move into this full time? What was the shift?
Yeah, I was working in a hospital, so in a clinical setting, traditional 40-hour week. And so I was seeing clients in the evening. And some people see a lot of clients in the evening after work, like while they're building their business, but I didn't have the capacity for more than one, like 3 days a week, like eve one each evening and only like 3 evenings a week. But I was noticing this uptick in inquiries as well as this contract position just kind of fell into my lap that I could use to like supplement because basically I got into this position where I was like, I can't see any more clients in the evenings, like after my work day. But if I leave my full-time job, this is not enough to support me either. And so that like supplemental contract position allowed me to
Do both.
like do both, take that jump and like grow my business and then have something that I could turn up or down based on how I needed it.
That's cool. That's cool. And can I just ask little bit more on the shame and confusion? So, what sort of results do you see? Like, you work with a patient, right? Like, what's generally the journey with them in terms of unmasking them, essentially? Like, do you quite often get people that like come in who haven't actually been formally diagnosed as neurodivergent, and then you see something in them that they are? Like, how does yeah, what's your kind of
Yeah, clients that come into us usually are diagnosed neurodivergent, or they think they are. Maybe they're not formally diagnosed, but they were like, I have these tendencies. So we just approach it in that way. Like, as a dietitian, I'm not a diagnosing provider, but of course, like I can notice just different behaviors and whether they have ADHD or not, like if they're engaging in this way, like this strategy might be helpful for them, right? Like it might not be as cut and dry, but I think a lot of times they come in of like maybe just feeling overwhelmed, not knowing where to start. And so for my neurodivergent folks, it's really like understanding like what are your goals? What do you want to get out of this? Like I'm not here to tell you what to get out of this.
no, you
Like
can't.
what do you yeah, like what do you want to get out of this? I think especially with I work with one that crosses over like eating disorder and neurodivergence is working with clients with RFID, avoidant restrictive feeding intake disorder. And it's an interesting eating disorder because it's not rooted in like negative body image or like
Never
obsession
heard of it.
around calories like typical eating disorders are. It's more and it's very common in neurodivergent folks because sometimes the driver is like sensitivities, like texture sensitivities, taste sensitivities with foods. And so it's kind of when they get to like very limited safe foods that they can have, very generally. And sometimes there's not really a cause. Like some children that experience like choking episodes with foods as children can develop this just from like that creates this fear around food or a certain type of foods. But sometimes there's not a lot of like I don't really like the word like it's illogical, but it's not always like this is why this happened
Yeah,
and this is why
100%.
this is hard. It
Yeah,
like sometimes it's just like because it is, right? There's not a really a good
it just
answer there.
is.
Yeah. And so I have a lot of providers that say, like, what's your approach with RFID clients? Because sometimes the approach is always like, expand what they're eating, expand what they're eating. And I'm like, well, if we're talking about like an older client, like an adult client, because with or with pediatric clients, like sometimes we're worried about growth and things like that. But overall, it's like, okay, well, first of all, it's like make sure they're getting enough with their safe foods and, enough like calorically, nutriently in general. And then if they want to expand their palate, then we can work on that, right? Like, if that is their goal, but if their goal is like, I just need to be eating enough to like meet my nutritional needs, okay, then we're going to do that in a way that works for them. Like, ideally, do we want to, you know, expand their palate? Yes, that's the gold standard. But if a client isn't ready to do that, like, I'm not going to force you to do that.
Yeah. I've got literally like two or so more questions, probably two, because I'm conscious of your time and yeah, in general. But So you're a lived experience. So you
Mhm.
have, you're neurodivergent. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so and like I'm a lived experience from an eating disorder as well.
Mhm.
And basically my question to you is, and I always find this, I'm always intrigued, is that how do you manage yours, like in terms of your relationship with food? Because it's a constant for me. I think I mentioned it pre-show.
Mhm.
Like I'm fine, I'm well, but it's always there. Like
Yeah.
it's psychologically always there. And so I could tell you like what I ate this time a week ago, for example.
Yeah.
So do you know what I mean? And so I was kind of, and I don't think I've ever asked this question before to somebody else in terms of, but yeah, how do you manage it? Because you have clients day in, day out. You
Mhm.
probably have full days and not necessarily finishing your day when your cup is full. And then you can easily just fall into, old habits die hard sort of thing. And I'm not suggesting that you do that, but I'm always
Sure.
intrigued. Yeah, like how do you ensure that you're looking after yourself?
Yeah. It's super interesting that you asked this question because I did an episode on my own podcast recently, just reflecting about like my own journey with relationship with food and like how my ADHD plays into that. And because I had a client that was like, "Oh, it's great to hear that like you don't do this perfectly," right? And I wasn't like, "I am engaging in this behavior," but it's like sometimes I wait too long to eat lunch, like, and because I get distracted at work or like, right, things that my clients are dealing with, it's like I'm human too. Like I'm not, I'm not doing this perfectly, but in terms of like relationship with food and like body image and that stuff, it's like and the way I phrase it to clients of like, it might never go away, like totally. Like, because, right, it still might pop up. Is it going to be as frequent? No. Is it going to be as loud? No. Are you going to be able to handle it better? Yes, we hope. Like you'll have these tools that you can rely on and it won't like derail you like as much as maybe earlier in your journey of like, okay, this is like derailed my whole day, or this is derailed a few hours. Okay, now it's only a few minutes or 30 minutes, right? Like that's also progress. So I think like even the other day, like I have trouble, fashion is not my like thing. And so I have trouble like this sounds so silly, like dressing myself. Like obviously I know how to put clothes on, but like it's
I
just
actually was looking at your top going, I love it. It's like a singlet top. It's summer, but I've been looking at the like cool patterns on there, and I'm like,
it's
yeah,
like
I think you've
texture.
got, I think you've got fashion sense. Like, what is fashion sense? Do you know what I
I
mean?
know.
So caught up with the influencers and everything. Like, it's back to being yourself. Yeah. Anyways,
Yeah. Yeah, but I was just having trouble. Like, I had this new pair of pants. And so that usually when I get a new pair of clothes, I'm like, I just don't know how I want to wear it, like what feels good. And I was just like having a total moment of like, nothing looks good. This doesn't like, I don't know what
yeah.
to do. And of course, like I got outside, like my boyfriend was picking me up and he was like, you look great. And I'm like, well, thanks. But like it's like I still have those moments where it's like it comes up and it's not always like, oh, like this makes me look fat or like those kind of things, but it's just to like, oh, I don't feel good in this. Like I
Yeah.
don't know, you know? But it's like, okay, and I had that moment. It was probably a 30-minute thing while I tried to get dressed. But then like I didn't think about that the rest of the day. And I didn't think about it again until like I was having a discussion like with the client
Yeah,
or
it's
with
so it's so good that you're sharing those lived experiences, and I'm only just more now after all those years, ready to share those experiences because I think we need to normalize that,
Mhm.
we're not perfect, and like, so your own experience, because your clients want to know that. They want to know that you're not just telling them. It's back to that restrictive versus attitude. Do you know what I mean? It's not just like holding it all up. Okay, last question. I'm going to let you get to dinner or whatever you're going to do tonight, but I'm sure dinner obviously will be included in it. But okay, so what would be one piece of advice you would give somebody? This is a tricky one, actually. I don't plan my questions. They just generally come to me. I guess who's feeling I'm going to just call in this shame and confusion because they're such strong words and not their
Yeah.
authentic self.
Mhm.
And they have a challenging, if you like, relationship with food.
Mhm.
and they just don't know what to do. They don't know they don't know where to go. They don't know who to ask, seek what to seek for help. They've actually tried different therapists or new dietitians or whatever. What would be your piece of advice for them?
Your journey is not linear, even though we want it to be so bad. Oh,
So
it's just
non-linear.
it's so non-linear, like, and right with anything, relationship with food, progression in your career, relationships, like nothing is linear, and that's super frustrating. I, twofold I say this because one, I feel like sometimes it can feel like, great, well, thanks. Like that's super like makes me feel not good, right? Scared. Like, where's that drop gonna be? But I think when that drop happens, it's not always a step back, right? Sometimes it's just a pause or like a step to the side, I like to say. But it's like that when that does happen, it's like that's normal. And almost if you didn't have that, like not I'd be concerned because obviously like a smooth progression is great, I guess. But those are the moments like we're learning the most, like those hard times. And so like they're necessary and we will like you'll spike back up above where you were before. It just takes time. Um
Yeah, that's
yeah.
good. That's good. Okay, and then what's next for Sam, and what's next for Unmasked Nutrition?
Yeah, we just recently, so we've been doing like one-on-one counseling for a while, and I brought on another dietitian to my team in March. But we recently just launched a new service that I alluded to earlier called Unmasked Meal Prep. And so I have done different body doubling groups, like as being an entrepreneur for getting work done, like doing the things you don't want to do but need to do. And I just had a lot of noticing a lot of clients could benefit from that. And I actually had a colleague be like, "Do you offer this service? Like, I feel like you would." I'm like, "I don't, but I like it. Like, can I steal this idea?" And she was like, "Yes, please." So it's a membership model, and folks can join, and we meet weekly to and like do anything you need to do food related. It might be cooking, it might be meal prep, it could be cleaning your kitchen. On Monday when we meet, I'm going to be cleaning out my fridge. But just some accountability and community. And then we do have like a community feature of like questions I ask about wins, challenges, so we can support each other. There are other resources like to
So
kind of help
cool. I
support.
love it. Yeah, you're so creative. Sam, thank you so much. Where do we go to find out more about you, Unmasked Nutrition?
Yeah, the two main places you can find me is one at our website, which is unmasked-nutrition.com. And that has information about all the stuff we do. And then I'm on Instagram at Sammy with two M's and an I, B as in boy, dot nutrition.
I'm just writing that down. Thank you so much, Sam. I've really enjoyed chatting with you on my Friday morning. Now that I can, and now I'm going to go and take my little 20-month-old puppy for a walk and a coffee and reflect on our conversation. So thank you so much. Yeah, you're exceptional, and I absolutely just love what you're doing and how you're reshaping the nutrition. I will say nutrition wellness space and making it more inclusive for people like neurodivergent or, others like, myself included who have quite often felt not included or there's something wrong with us. So, thank you so much. I thoroughly have enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having me today.
No, thank you. Have a nice evening and a happy Friday tomorrow. Thanks,
Thank
Sam.
you.
Thanks.